The billionaire's son lay rigid on the storm-slicked stone terrace, his body locked in shock under the raging night sky, while the maid crouched close, her palms cradling a twisting tendril of shadow that throbbed with unnatural light. "Scarlet, what darkness have you summoned?" the estate manager hissed, rooted in place by dread. Heavy boots pounded across the grounds. Eugene Leon, the titan whose empire shaped waves of innovation, erupted through the downpour, his features twisted in alarm. "What have you inflicted on my bloodline?" he thundered, closing in. Scarlet raised her eyes, unflinching in the turmoil, murmuring, "I merely released him, my lord. I swear it." She parted her fingers, exposing the coiling entity that defied the storm's fury. Onlookers recoiled, breath stolen, the night dense with unspoken horror until a fragile utterance pierced it. "Father." From the boy born in utter silence. The same boy who had never uttered a sound in his 12 years. In that instant no one stirred, not even Eugene. And then it dawned on him that the maid had shattered the unbreakable. The murmur grew into Richard's hesitant call of "Scarlet," laying bare the wondrous shift. Dear listeners, this is a story of bloodlines, curses, and a woman who walks between worlds. Stay until the final wave crashes. The Leon stronghold perched on cliffs where oceans clashed eternally, its halls aglow with ethereal lights yet barren of warmth. Every vaulted space echoed void. Servants glided in hushed precision, wary of the Lord's unyielding code. Eugene reigned over realms of sound manipulation, his days a forge of deals and dominance, yet nights haunted by a father's unspoken torment. His sole heir, Richard, entered the world without hearing, impervious to every advanced procedure his vast resources commanded. He had scoured continents, funding visionaries with vows of breakthrough, only to return to the same void. Richard, at 12, navigated existence through tremors and gazes, frequently kneeling in the earth to trace formations as though unraveling hidden codes. The household kept aloof, treating his voicelessness as ill fortune, but Scarlet's arrival altered the currents 3 months prior. Scarlet Huffman stepped into the cliffside estate on a day when the ocean roared like an angry spirit, her deep caramel skin glistening from the mist, her waist-length braids adorned with tiny cowrie shells that clicked softly with each movement. She was tall and lithe, her piercing hazel-green eyes carrying a faint glow even in the harsh light of the entry hall, as if they held secrets from ancient forests. She wore a simple linen dress beneath the standard maid uniform, and she went barefoot when off duty, her feet silent on the cold floors. In her small leather pouch, she carried herbs and crystals that hummed faintly to her touch. She had come from the Niger Delta, where an oil spill had razed her village, leaving her grandmother in need of dialysis that drained every coin Scarlet could earn. The job at the Leon estate promised steady pay, and she took it without hesitation, though the opulence felt like a cage compared to the open waters of her home. Eugene Leon built his empire on biotech that manipulated sound waves, creating devices that could amplify whispers across oceans or silence chaos in crowded cities. His company dominated global markets, turning vibrations into profit. Yet his greatest failure lay in his own home. Richard's birth had been overseen by a rival firm's obstetrician during a routine delivery, or so the records claimed. From the moment the boy emerged, no cry escaped his lips. Tests confirmed profound deafness, and Eugene threw his fortune at solutions. Surgeons implanted experimental cochlear devices. Therapists flew in from distant labs with gene therapies. Clinics in hidden facilities promised neural rewiring. Year after year, the results remained the same. Richard grew in a world of silence, his expressive gray eyes tracking every vibration, his slender frame pale with sharp cheekbones, jet black hair often falling over one eye. He dressed in soft cashmere sweaters and tailored trousers, moving with careful grace through the vast spaces. The staff learned to communicate with Richard through basic signs, but most avoided him. His condition seemed like a shadow over the estate, a reminder that even Eugene's power had limits. Servants whispered that the boy's silence brought bad luck, and they kept interactions minimal. Polishing the bioluminescent sconces that lit the halls at night, They glanced at him only when necessary. Richard spent hours in the gardens, pressing his ear to the soil as if listening to the earth's hidden pulses, or arranging pebbles in intricate patterns that no one understood. Scarlet noticed him from her first day. While dusting a crystal orb in the main hall, she hummed an ancient Yoruba healing song under her breath, the vibrations traveling through the air. Richard, passing by, paused. He felt the hum in his chest, a sensation new and intriguing. He turned toward her, his gray eyes curious. Scarlet smiled, her hazel-green gaze meeting his without pity. She continued humming, and he stood there longer than usual, his fingers twitching as if signing something unspoken. That was the first bond, subtle yet profound. From then on, Scarlet left small tokens. A carved talisman on his windowsill, shaped like a protective eye. An infused tea that eased his occasional headaches, placed discreetly near his play area. First, Richard ignored them. But one morning, she found the talisman tucked into his pocket, and the teacup empty. He began seeking her out. When she cleaned the terrace overlooking the turbulent ocean, he would sit nearby, watching her reflection in the glass doors. She waved and he waved back. Once, when she dropped a cloth and it fluttered in the wind, he laughed silently, his shoulders shaking. It was the first time anyone in the estate had seen joy on his face. Not everyone approved. The estate manager, a stern man named Harlan, pulled Scarlet aside one evening as she arranged fresh linens. "Stay away from the young master," he warned in a low voice. "Lord Leon does not allow staff to get personal." Scarlet looked up, her braids swaying. "He seems less alone with simple kindness," she replied quietly. Harlan shook his head. "Your job is maintenance, not companionship. Heed or face consequences." Scarlet nodded outwardly, but inside resolve hardened. She knew loneliness too well. Her grandmother, Mama Yemisi, had raised her after the fever that took her siblings. Scarlet survived because of the old woman's rituals, bloodroot brews and spirit songs that expelled the shadows claiming her life. Marked as the next Veil Walker, Scarlet carried that legacy. She saw the same shadows in Richard's eyes. That night, as the storm brewed outside, Scarlet sat in her small quarters below the main level. The ocean's roar filtered through the walls, a constant reminder of home. Her pouch lay open on the bed, crystals glinting. When she had passed Richard earlier in the garden, the pouch had glowed faintly, a sign she recognized from her training. Something unnatural clung to the boy. He had been scratching his ear, wincing. She signed, "Pain." He nodded, fear flashing. Peering closer in the fading light, she glimpsed it deep inside, a shimmering gloom. Not infection, something alive. She suggested telling his father, but Richard signed frantically. "No doctors. It hurt." His hands trembled. Scarlet understood. The procedures had left scars, physical and otherwise. Sleep evaded her. The image haunted. What if this was the key to his silence? Without Eugene's approval, no one would listen. She rose before dawn the next day, but Richard's discomfort worsened. He clutched his ear during meals, tears welling. Scarlet followed him to his chamber, heart pounding. "Ancestors guide me," she whispered. He winced again. She made her choice. From her pouch, she drew a consecrated obsidian needle, used for mending garments but blessed in rituals. "It is okay," she signed and voiced softly. "I help." As her hand neared, the door creaked. Harlan watched from the shadows. The creak froze Scarlet. She turned to see Eugene in the doorway, his midnight blue suit impeccable despite the late hour. His salt and pepper hair slicked back, storm-gray eyes sharp. "What are you doing?" His voice boomed low. Scarlet stood, hiding the needle. "My lord, he hurts. I only wish to ease it." Eugene glanced at Richard, who held his ear, blinking in pain. "You are no healer. Summon me for his needs." Scarlet bowed. "Yes, my lord." He sighed, rubbing his face. "Too many false hopes. I cannot risk more." His voice cracked briefly, then hardened. Leave. Scarlet obeyed, steps heavy. In the hall, she leaned against the wall. He does not see the suffering, she murmured. Hours later, the estate settled into quiet. But Scarlet could not. Richard's pain, the glimpsed shadow, his fear of doctors. She returned to her room, sat by her heritage items. Mama Yemisi's teachings echoed. Never ignore a child's shadow. She stood, barefoot on cold floors, pouch in hand. The house slept, bioluminescent sconces dim. She slipped to Richard's chamber. The door ajar, vigil light soft. Richard sat awake, pressing his ear. Hurts again, she signed. He nodded, eyes wet. Scarlet knelt. Let me see. He leaned. Light revealed the shimmer clearly now. Intruder. Okay, she whispered. Gentle. Needle in trembling hand. Still. He nodded, scared. Deep breath. Tip touched soft resistance. Hook and pull. It slid out, black, round, moving faintly into her palm. Richard touched his ear, confused. Yes. Scarlet leaned. You okay? Throat to mouth. Rough sound. Real. Scarlet. Her body froze. Ears. You spoke. Again clearer. Scarlet. She dropped the needle. You hear. He covered ears at a distant wave crash. Wonder and fear. Sound. She nodded, smiling through tears. Yes. Harlan entered then. Eyes wide. What sorcery? Scarlet turned. Quiet. He hears now. Harlan shouted for Eugene. Richard jumped, whimpering. Scarlet hugged. Okay. Footsteps thundered. Eugene arrived, pale. What is this? Harlan pointed. She touched him. Richard clung, lips moving. Father. Room stilled. Eugene froze. He hears, Scarlet whispered. Richard again. Father, mad not. Eugene whispered, his voice. Anger rose. What did you do? Pulled out what was inside. You could have killed him. Guards rushed. Take her. Richard screamed no. As dragged away, his cries of her name echoed. But that was the terrace moment, hours later, after Richard, overwhelmed by new sounds in his room, had wandered out into the storm, collapsing in shock. Scarlet followed, sensing the tendrils' remnants stirring. On the terrace at 11:47 p.m., thunderstorm peaking, she extracted the final wisp as it tried to re-enter. Palms glowed faintly from residual energy. Harlan screamed. Eugene burst through glass doors, rain-soaked. The whisper, Father. The world narrowed. Now, in the aftermath on the terrace, Eugene stared at the writhing obsidian tendril in Scarlet's hand. His encrypted device buzzed in his pocket. He glanced. The seal weakens. From an unknown sender. Scarlet's pouch glowed brighter near Richard, who sat up slowly, whispering Scarlet again, eyes wide at the thunder. Eugene's mind raced. Biotech empire, sound waves his domain, yet this defied logic. Richard's birth, the rival obstetrician. Coincidence. Guards held Scarlet. Lock her in the grotto, Eugene ordered, voice steady but eyes betraying doubt. Experts arrive at dawn. As they led her away, the ocean crashed below, speaking secrets only the night understood. Richard reached for her, but Eugene pulled him close. The storm raged on, foreshadowing greater tempests. Scarlet descended to the hidden underground grotto, runes on walls flickering in response to her presence. She touched one, feeling ancestral pull. The tendril in the jar upstairs still moved. Eugene paced the terrace, Richard clinging, new sounds assaulting him. Waves, rain, heartbeats. Eugene recalled the first bond months ago. Scarlet humming while polishing the crystal orb. Richard pausing, feeling it. Subtle tokens building trust. Her village raised, grandmother's need. All pieces now clicking. The encrypted message burned. Seal weakens. What seal? Dawn approached. Private jet inbound. But the ocean spoke louder, waves crashing like warnings. Scarlet in the grotto deciphered a rune. Umbra seed. Feeds on guilt. Eugene's guilt. His father's deals. Richard whispered questions, voice tentative. More sounds. Eugene nodded, holding tighter. The night the ocean spoke had only begun. Scarlet's chains clinked softly against the damp stone as the guards shoved her deeper into the grotto. The heavy iron door slammed shut behind her, echoing like a final judgment through the underground chamber. Dim bioluminescent sconces flickered to life along the walls, casting an eerie blue glow that danced across ancient carvings etched into the rock. She stumbled forward, her bare feet cold on the uneven floor, the leather pouch still clutched in her bound hands. The air hung thick with salt from the nearby ocean seeping through cracks, mingled with a faint metallic tang that made her skin prickle. As she steadied herself against a pillar, the runes began to respond. They pulsed faintly at first, then brighter, as if awakening to her bloodline. Scarlet's hazel-green eyes widened, the glow in them mirroring the walls. She had felt this pull before, in the sacred groves of her village, but never so intensely. 12 years earlier, in a sterile delivery suite high above the city lights, Eugene Leon paced outside the glass walls, his hands clasped behind his back. The birth of his heir was meant to be a triumph, a continuation of the Leon dynasty that had risen from humble engineers to biotech emperors. His wife, pale and exhausted on the table, gripped the rails as contractions peaked. The obstetrician, a sharp-featured man with gloved hands and a name tag reading Dr. Victor Kane, nodded reassuringly to the nurses. "Routine procedure," he murmured, though his eyes held a glint of something colder. Kane worked for a rival conglomerate, one that had lost billions to Eugene's soundwave patents. As the baby crowned, Kane's fingers moved with precision, but not for the child's sake. Concealed in his palm was a tiny capsule, no larger than a grain of rice, engineered in secret labs blending biotechnology and forbidden occult bindings. The Umbra seed, a bio-spiritual parasite designed to latch onto neural pathways and sever auditory connections while feeding on familial discord. The infant emerged silent, no wail piercing the room. Kane's lips curled subtly as he clipped the cord. "Profound deafness from birth," he announced calmly, injecting a suppressant to mask any immediate anomalies. "Congenital neural shutdown. Tragic, but irreversible." Eugene burst in moments later, his storm-gray eyes filling with a mix of joy and instant dread. He cradled the boy, whispering promises of cures, while Kane slipped away to report success. Paid doctors in the network echoed the diagnosis, pocketing hefty fees to sustain the lie. Scans were altered, therapies prescribed that targeted nothing. The seed burrowed deep, thriving on the growing rift it created. Eugene's guilt over his absent fatherhood during endless board meetings, the unspoken blame toward his wife who passed soon after from complications. Victor Kane watched from afar, his sabotage complete, the Leon bloodline cursed to wither in silence. In the Niger Delta, around the same time, a young Scarlet lay burning with fever in a thatched hut, her small body convulsing as shadows danced in her delirium. The plague had swept the village, claiming her siblings one by one, their tiny forms wrapped in cloths, buried under mango trees. Mama Yemisi, her grandmother with skin like polished ebony and eyes that saw beyond the veil, refused to let death take another. She gathered bloodroot from sacred soils, crushed it with herbs whispered over by ancestors, and brewed a potion thick as midnight. As the full moon rose, Yemisi sang spirit songs in Yoruba, her voice weaving protection around the child. "Shadows be gone, light reclaim," she chanted, drawing a circle of salt and ash. The fever peaked, and from Scarlet's ear seeped a similar darkness, a writhing tendril much like the one now extracted from Richard. Yemisi hooked it with a bone needle, pulling until it dissipated into smoke. Scarlet gasped awake, her cries the first sound in days. "You are marked, child," Yemisi whispered, tying a cowrie shell into her budding braids. "Veil Walker, guardian between worlds. This shadow will call you again." Back in the present, Scarlet traced the glowing runes with chained fingers, the carvings shifting under her touch like living script. Words formed in her mind, Ancient warnings passed through veil walkers for generations. The Umbra seed feeds on ancestral guilt. It roots in betrayal, grows with denial, blooms in isolation. Her breath caught. Eugene's empire, built on his father's ruthless deals, perhaps even Pax Victor exploited. The seed in Richard was no accident. It was vengeance incarnate. The grotto walls hummed approval, energy coursing through her veins, easing the ache in her wrists. She closed her eyes, invoking Mama Yemisi's songs silently, feeling the chains loosen ever so slightly, not from force but from spiritual resonance. Upstairs, in a lavish medical wing bathed in soft white light, Richard sat on the edge of a bed, his slender frame dwarfed by monitors beeping softly. The sounds assaulted him relentlessly. Waves crashing far below the cliffs, a rhythmic boom that shook his core. His own heartbeat, thumping like distant drums. The nurse's shoes squeaking on the floor, a high-pitched whine that made him wince. And his voice, strange and fragile, echoing in his head when he tried to form words. He had whispered father on the terrace, then Scarlet, but now everything overwhelmed. Tears streamed down his pale cheeks. His jet-black hair matted from the rain. The nurse, a kind-faced woman in scrubs, adjusted and drip. Richard signed frantically, his expressive gray eyes pleading. Find the woman with shells in her hair. The nurse hesitated, understanding basic signs from staff training. Scarlet. She's unavailable, young master. Richard shook his head, signing again, slower. She help. Now. Need her. The nurse patted his hand, but he pulled away, curling into himself, the cashmere sweater bunching. The world, once vibrations and sights, now roared with chaos he could not control. Eugene stood outside the glass observation window, his towering form rigid, salt and pepper hair disheveled for the first time in years. He refused to believe in curses, in shadows that moved with intent. His world was data, patents, sonic frequencies manipulated to bend reality. Yet the tendril in the sealed jar on the counter still twitched, defying preservation fluids. Richard's voice replayed in his mind, that single father cracking something deep inside. He clutched his encrypted device, the message glowing, the seal weakens. Sent from a blocked number, but the signature traced to old rivals. His thoughts drifted to his own father, a hard man who built the foundation of their empire through cutthroat acquisitions. On his deathbed, he had gripped Eugene's hand. Never trust Cain. He plays in shadows we cannot see. Eugene had dismissed it as delirium, focusing on expansion. Victor Cain, the obstetrician turned competitor, always one step behind in bids, nursing grudges from lost contracts. Could it be? Eugene shook his head, but doubt crept in like the ocean mist through cracks. Richard's nurse emerged, concern etching her features. He's asking for the maid, my lord. The one who did this. Eugene's storm-gray eyes narrowed. Scarlet. Keep him calm. No mentions of her. Inside, Richard signed to himself, practicing the new shapes of words on his lips. Scarlet. Father. Ocean. The heartbeat steadied him somewhat, a personal rhythm amid the storm. In the grotto, Scarlet sat cross-legged, the runes now fully illuminated, projecting faint holograms of past veil walkers battling similar entities. She understood the dual timeline converging. The seed in Richard mirrored her childhood shadow, but amplified, tied to bloodline sins. Ancestral guilt, Eugene's perhaps from ignoring his father's warning, or deeper pacts. Her pouch, confiscated but vibrating through the door, called to her. She needed to reach the boy before the experts arrived, before they suppressed the truth again. Eugene entered the medical wing, sitting beside Richard. The boy looked up, signing slowly. Hurts less, but loud. Everything loud. Eugene nodded, forcing a smile. We'll fix the volume, son. Experts coming. Richard signed, insistent. Woman with shells. She knows. Eugene's conflict boiled. Refusal to accept mysticism warred with the evidence. His father's words echoed louder now. Never trust Cain. He glanced at the jar, the tendril coiling tighter. Dawn broke over the cliffs, pink light piercing the storm clouds. A private jet descended onto the estate's helipad, engines whining. Doors opened, figures in hazmat suits emerging, carrying cases marked with Cain's rival logo subtly hidden. Eugene watched from the terrace, Richard at his side, the boy's hand in his. Scarlet, in the grotto, felt the runes dim slightly, a warning. The experts had arrived, but the curse in the cradle was far from cradled. The hazmat team leader approached Eugene, visor reflecting his face. We'll examine the boy and the specimen. Standard protocol for anomalies. Eugene nodded, but his grip on Richard tightened. The seal weakens. Richard tugged his sleeve, signing. Shell's woman. Eugene exhaled, conflict unresolved. The ocean below whispered on, carrying echoes of 12 years ago, of fevers and implants, of guilts unspoken. Scarlet pressed her palm to a central rune, energy surging. It revealed more. The seed requires counter at tidal convergence, blood and confession. She had 48 hours. The guards outside shifted, voices murmuring about the arrivals. Dawn's light filtered down vents, illuminating her determined face. Mama Yemisi's voice in her mind. Marked for this child. Richard in the wing heard the jet engines for the first time, a roar that made him cover his ears. But amid the noise, he focused on one vibration, the faint hum from below, Scarlet's song calling him. He signed to the nurse again. Find her. The experts entered, suits rustling like dry leaves. Eugene watched, recalling Cain's face at the birth, the silent infant. Refusal cracked. Perhaps shadows did play. The grotto door rattled as a guard peeked in. Lord's orders. Stay put. Scarlet smiled faintly, runes pulsing in agreement. The curse in the cradle had awakened its hunter. The guard's face vanished from the grotto door's small grate, leaving Scarlet alone with the pulsing runes once more. She rose slowly, chains dragging across the stone, her mind racing through the revelations. The Umbra seed was no mere parasite. It bound to oaths sworn in blood, growing stronger with each denial. Eugene would come soon, drawn by doubt or desperation. She pressed her forehead to the cool wall, breathing in the salt air, preparing her words. Truth would be her weapon now. Footsteps echoed down the spiral stairs, heavy and purposeful. Eugene descended, his midnight blue suit rumpled from the sleepless night, storm-gray eyes bloodshot but sharp. 2 guards flanked him, but he waved them back at the door. He entered alone, the iron clanging shut behind him. The runes flared brighter at his presence, casting shadows that danced like accusations. Scarlet turned, her braids swaying, cowrie shells clicking softly. Eugene held the sealed jar in one hand, the writhing obsidian tendril inside coiling against the glass as if sensing him. Explain this, he demanded, voice low but edged with barely contained fury. What is it? Poison. Some trick. Scarlet met his gaze steadily, her hazel-green eyes glowing faintly in the blue light. Not poison, my lord. The Umbra seed. Live, yes. Tied to a blood oath made long before Richard's birth. She stepped closer, chains limiting her reach. It latches to the ear, severs sound, feeds on guilt passed through generations. Your father's deals, perhaps. Or deeper pacts. Eugene scoffed, a harsh sound that echoed off the walls. Superstition. Ideal in science frequencies, neural maps. This is biology gone wrong, nothing more. Yet his eyes flicked to the jar. The tendril pressed against the side nearest him, pulsing faster. He shook it slightly, watching it react. It's moving. Preservative should have killed it. Because it is not fully of this world, Scarlet replied calmly. Extracted, it weakens, but the oath sustains it. Deny, and it regrows. Accept the truth, and it starves. Eugene set the jar on a stone ledge, his broad shoulders tensing. Truth. You sneak into my son's room, perform some ritual, and he speaks. Then this thing. Coincidence? Scarlet shook her head. No coincidence. I felt it months ago, in my pouch's glow. The ancestors guided me. Richard's pain was the call. Eugene paced the small space, his aura of controlled menace cracking. Guided. You're a maid, not a shaman. But doubt lingered in his tone, the tendril's movement undeniable. Upstairs in the hospital wing, the hazmat team bustled around Richard's bed, scanners humming like angry bees. The lead doctor, a thin man with a clipped beard and eyes too calm for the chaos, adjusted dials on a portable neural imager. Temporary psychotic break induced by trauma, he announced smoothly, his voice muffled through the suit's speaker. The speech is hallucinatory vocalization, common in sudden sensory overload cases. Richard sat propped against pillows, his gray eyes wide as the machines beeped. The sounds grated now, scanners whining high-pitched, the doctor's voice distorted and echoing. He signed weakly to a nurse. Wait, I hear real. The nurse glanced nervously at the team but said nothing. Eugene had left the grotto briefly, drawn by the team's arrival, but returned with a tablet in hand. He watched the scan results feed live, lines of data scrolling. The lead doctor pointed to a screen. See. No structural change. The blockage you mentioned doesn't appear. But Eugene's biotech expertise spotted anomalies, faint signatures masked by overlays. He swiped deeper into the system, bypassing public layers. A hidden file popped up, encrypted but cracked by his personal overrides. Maintain silence protocol, it read. Leon account exceeds 400 M. Sustain consultations quarterly. Suppress anomalies. His chest tightened. Payments traced to offshore accounts linked to Victor Kane's network. The doctors bought long ago, perpetuating the lie for profit. The seed's camouflage, perfect for hiding in plain scans. In the grotto, Scarlet felt the shift. The runes dimmed slightly, then brightened in patterns. She sank to her knees, entering a trance without ritual, the chamber's energy amplifying her gift. Visions flooded. A blood moon hung low over the delivery room 12 years prior. Victor Kane, younger but with the same cold glint, hovered over the newborn Richard. In his hand, the capsule glowed faintly red. He whispered an oath in a forgotten tongue, pricking his finger and dotting blood on the seed before insertion. For the debts unpaid, the line shall fade in silence. Nurses turned away, bribed. Eugene outside, oblivious. The seed took root, neural pathways severing as it bonded. Victor smiled, pocketing a vial of Leon blood for future bindings. The vision sharpened on Victor's face, scarred from an old lab accident, eyes burning with vengeance for Eugene's father bankrupting his family decades ago. Scarlet gasped awake, chains rattling. Eugene re-entered then, tablet clutched white-knuckled. They lie, he growled more to himself. The scans, the diagnosis. All for money. He showed her the file. Scarlet nodded. The false prophets. They see not the seed, only the gold it brings. Eugene's scoff returned weaker. The tendril in the jar lunged toward the tablet as if sensing the exposure. He noticed stepping back. Alive. Tied to oath, you said. Scarlet rose. Blood oath. Victor's. Break it with confession, counter-ritual. Eugene's mind whirled. His father's warning. Kane's presence at the birth. The account draining millions yearly. Richard, in the wing, grew restless. The lead doctor's claims rang false in his new ears, the voice tinny and rehearsed. The scanners hurt, beams buzzing like insects in his skull. He waited for a moment when the nurse turned to fetch water, the hazmat team consulting notes. Slipping from the bed, his bare feet silent on the floor, he moved toward the door. A guard outside chatted with another, distracted by the storm's remnants. Richard pressed against the wall, heart pounding loud in his ears. Then he heard it, faint but clear, echoing through the ventilation shafts. Scarlet's humming, the Yoruba healing song from months ago. It vibrated through the metal, guiding him like a thread. He darted into the corridor, cashmere sweater snagging on a cart. Alarms remained silent. The team focused on data fabrication. Down service stairs, past kitchens where early staff prepared breakfast, their voices a cacophony he navigated carefully. The humming grew stronger, pulling him lower. Guards patrolled upper levels, but the underground passages were less watched. Richard's gray eyes darted, tracking sounds now, footsteps approaching. He hid behind crates. The vents carried the song clearer, Scarlet invoking it deliberately from the grotto, sensing his approach. Eugene stormed the wing, confronting the lead doctor. "Explain this protocol." He thrust the tablet forward. The doctor paled behind the visor. "Misinterpretation, sir. Administrative error." Eugene's voice rose. 400 million for errors. "You're done." He signaled security, but the team hesitated, loyalties divided. Chaos erupted, suits scrambling as Eugene demanded the raw scans unfiltered. Richard, meanwhile, reached the lower levels, the humming a beacon. The grotto door loomed, guarded by one man dozing on a stool. Scarlet ceased humming as footsteps neared. Richard pressed to the grate, signing through the small opening. "Here, open." The guard stirred, but Richard froze, mimicking sleep. Eugene, upstairs, smashed the false report tablet against the wall in rage, shards scattering. "Liars! All of them!" His roar echoed down vents. The guard jolted awake, rushing upward to investigate. Richard pushed the door, unlocked in the haste. He slipped inside. Scarlet turned, chains clinking. "Richard!" He ran to her, hugging tight. "Heard you. Song." His voice whispered, awed. Eugene's smash reverberated closer, the deception exposed fully now. The lead doctor pleaded as security dragged him. "Kane will explain." Eugene froze. The vision Scarlet saw aligned. He bolted for the grotto, guards trailing. Richard at the door, small hand on the handle as Eugene arrived, face thunderous. The false prophets crumbled, but the true architect loomed. Richard opened the door wide. "Father." "Truth now." Eugene stared, the smashed report's remnants in mind, Scarlet's chains, the boy's voice. The cliffhanger hung as he stepped in, the family united in the glowing chamber. Eugene knelt, unchaining Scarlet himself. "Tell me everything." The runes approved, brightening. Richard clung to both. The hospital wing emptied of hazmat liars, scans revealing the seed scar for the first time. Victor's ritual under the blood moon played in Scarlet's shared vision. Eugene confessed ignorance. "I trusted them." The accounts drained, the protocol all exposed. Richard signed and spoke. "No more false." Eugene nodded, smashing another device in emphasis. The wall cracked slightly from the force. Dawn's full light streamed in vents. The deception shattered like the report. Eugene's fingers trembled as he twisted the key in the ancient lock, the chains falling from Scarlet's wrists with a metallic clatter that echoed through the glowing grotto. She rubbed the red marks on her deep caramel skin, her hazel-green eyes meeting his without accusation, only quiet understanding. Richard launched himself at her, slender arms wrapping around her waist, his face buried in the linen of her dress. "You smell like rain and home," he whispered, the words muffled but clear. His voice still a novelty that made Eugene's throat tighten. Scarlet knelt, embracing him fully, her braids with cowrie shells brushing his jet-black hair. "I am here, little one. Safe now." Eugene stood over them, his towering frame casting a long shadow in the rune light, the smashed tablet's remnants forgotten upstairs. The false prophets were being escorted out, their lies crumbling like the device he had shattered. For the first time, vulnerability cracked his controlled menace. He extended a hand to help Scarlet rise. "Forgive me. I was blind." She took it, her grip firm, lithe strength surprising him. "Blindness ends with sight, my lord. The seed demands more than extraction." Richard clung to her side, gray eyes flicking between them. Eugene nodded, leading them up the spiral stairs, guards parting in confusion but obeying his new authority. The estate stirred with morning activity, staff whispering about the hazmat team's abrupt departure, the exposed files circulating on secure channels. Eugene ignored them, guiding Scarlett and Richard to a private study overlooking the cliffs, bioluminescent sconces dimming as sunlight filtered through reinforced glass. Seated around a low table carved from driftwood, Scarlett explained the lore, her voice steady like the ocean's undertow. The Umbra seed is no simple implant. It binds through blood oath, but counters with ritual at exact tidal convergence. 48 hours remain until the next peak high tide aligns with the moon's pull. She traced patterns in the air, invisible threads only she saw. Needs 4 elements: Richard's blood to unbind the host, your confession of greed to starve the guilt it feeds on, ocean water gathered at the surge's height, and a song only a veil walker can sing, woven from ancestral spirits. Richard listened rapt, his new ears catching every nuance, the faint click of her shells, the rustle of her dress. Eugene leaned forward, salt and pepper hair falling slightly, storm-gray eyes intense. Greed. You mean the merger? Scarlett nodded. The seed senses denial. Confess what you buried, and it weakens. Eugene exhaled, staring at the turbulent sea below. 12 years ago, during the merger that catapulted his biotech firm to dominance, early scans on the newborn Richard showed an anomaly, a foreign signature in the auditory canal. Advisors urged discretion to avoid stock dips, lawsuits from the rival obstetrician. He ignored them, prioritizing the deal that netted billions. I saw the reports, he admitted, voice rough. Kane's team handled the birth. I pushed for silence to protect the merger. Scandal would have ruined us. I chose empire over my son. The words hung heavy, ancestral guilt surfacing like bubbles from the deep. Richard reached for his hand, squeezing. Father. Eugene pulled him close, the confession a weightlifting yet burdening anew. Scarlett's eyes softened. Truth. Starves the seed. Now we prepare. They moved with purpose. Scarlett retrieved her leather pouch from confiscation, herbs and crystals humming in approval. Eugene secured a small vial for blood, a consecrated bowl for ocean water. Richard practiced his voice, whispering ritual words Scarlett taught him. But security feeds buzzed on Eugene's device. Unidentified vehicles approached the estate gates, black SUVs with tinted windows. Victor's mercenaries, no doubt alerted by the exposed doctors. They come for the boy, Eugene growled. To reimplant or silence. Scarlett's gaze hardened. The cove. Cliffside hidden path. Tide rises soon. Eugene nodded, his decades of boardroom battles channeling into action. He armed himself with a compact sonic disruptor from his lab, a prototype that overloaded electronics with targeted frequencies. They sneaked through service corridors, avoiding main halls where staff milled in confusion. Richard's bare feet padded silently, guided by Scarlett's hand. Eugene led, his broad shoulders tense under the midnight blue suit now stained with grotto dust. Down a concealed elevator to the lower levels, then out a side exit camouflaged by vines overhanging the cliffs. The ocean roared below, waves crashing against rocks in white foam. The path wound narrow, slick from spray, the estate's glass and steel facade looming above like a watchful giant. Dawn's light gilded the water, but clouds gathered, promising another storm. Halfway down, engines revved above. Mercenaries breached the gates, figures in tactical gear spilling out, rifles scanning. One spotted the trio's descent, shouting coordinates. Eugene urged faster. The cove conceals us. Richard stumbled on loose gravel, but Scarlett steadied him, her lithe form sure-footed from village paths. Gunfire cracked, bullets pinging off rocks nearby. Eugene activated the disruptor, a low hum emitting, scrambling the mercenaries' comms. Static filled their earpieces, disorienting them temporarily. They reached the cliffside cove, a secluded inlet where high tides formed natural pools, bioluminescent algae glowing faintly in crevices. Scarlet knelt at the water's edge, filling the bowl as waves surged. High tide approaches. Convergence in hours. Richard pricked his finger with a sterile needle, blood dripping into the vial. His face pale but determined. Eugene confessed again, louder for the spirits. I ignored the scans for greed. Empire over family. Forgive me. The air thickened, runes from the grotto echoing in Scarlet's mind. Mercenaries rappelled down the cliffs, ropes whipping in wind. The leader, scarred like Victor, barked orders despite jammed comms. They fanned out, boots crunching on shells. Eugene positioned behind a boulder, disruptor ready. Stay low. Scarlet began the song's prelude, a low hum building. Richard joined, his young voice tentative but pure. Gunfire erupted fully. Bullets splintered rock. Scarlet pulled Richard behind her, shielding with her body as a stray round grazed her arm. Blood welled, hot and sharp, staining her linen. She winced but held the bowl steady, ocean water mixing with Richard's blood. Eugene roared, emerging for the first time in decades from behind desks into physical fray. He charged a mercenary, using the disruptor to stun, then disarming with brutal efficiency honed in youth before wealth softened him. Fists connected, rifles clattered. Not my son. His aura of menace unleashed. Scarlet pressed her wound, singing louder, the Veil Walker's melody rising against the tide. Richard added his whisper. Eugene fought back-to-back with another foe, decades of pent-up guilt fueling strikes. Mercenaries closed in, but the cove's narrow entrance bottlenecked them. The graze on Scarlet's arm burned, but she focused, the ritual elements assembling. Tidal convergence neared, waves crashing higher. Eugene grappled the scarred leader, sonic device overloading the man's vest electronics, sparks flying. He pinned him, demanding, Cain sent you. The man spat. The oath endures. Eugene headbutt, knocking him out. More descended. Scarlet's song peaked in prelude, spirits stirring the water to froth. Richard clung, whispering, Home. Eugene glanced back, seeing the blood on Scarlet, resolve hardening. He fought fiercer, protecting the ritual's cradle. Gunfire echoed, a bullet whizzing past Eugene's ear. Scarlet shielded Richard tighter, her blood dripping into the bowl, unintended but perhaps fated. The counter-ritual demanded sacrifice. Waves surged, high tide inching. Eugene disarmed another, his suit torn, knuckles bloodied. For the first time he fought not for empire but blood and salt. The mercenaries pressed, but the cove held secrets, rocks shifting under tide. Scarlet's voice carried, song building to invocation. Eugene stood guard, breathing heavy, the turning point complete. Greed confessed, family united. But the battle raged, gunfire crescendoing as convergence loomed. Richard's hand in hers, Scarlet prepared the full song. Eugene's fights echoed decades of inaction reversed. The Greys wept blood, but she sang through pain. Victor's tale tightened, but the cove became sanctuary and battlefield. The moon hung swollen and crimson over the cove as midnight approached, the storm unleashing its full fury upon the cliffs. Rain lashed sideways, mingling with ocean spray that stung like needles. Waves thundered against the rocks, each crash a heartbeat of the tide that remembered ancient rites. Scarlet stood at the center of the inlet, her grazed arm bound with a strip torn from her linen dress, blood seeping through but ignored. The bioluminescent algae glowed brighter under the tempest, veins of ethereal blue pulsing in the pools. She scooped handfuls of the luminous growth, mixing it with coarse salt from her pouch, drawing a wide circle on the wet sand. The algae left trailing light, the boundary shimmering like a living ward. Inside, she commanded softly, voice cutting through the gale. Eugene carried Richard over the threshold, the boy's slender frame shivering in his cashmere sweater, now soaked and clinging. They knelt within the circle, the ocean water in the consecrated bowl swirling with Richard's blood, Scarlet's unintended addition, and now awaiting Eugene's. Eugene drew a small blade from his belt, the same one used to fend off mercenaries earlier. His broad hand steady despite the fight's toll. He sliced his palm deep, crimson welling instantly. He pressed it over the bowl, blood dripping to mix with the others, a triad of lineage, sacrifice, and healing. "For the greed I confessed," he intoned, storm-gray eyes locked on the surging tide. "Let it bind the counter." Richard watched wide-eyed, his gray gaze reflecting the circle's glow, then extended his pricked finger again, adding more drops. The mixture darkened, swirling unnaturally, as if the elements recognized the ritual's gravity. Scarlet nodded approval, her braids heavy with rain, cowrie shells darkened but clicking defiantly. The salt circle sealed with a final algae streak, the boundary humming, repelling the storm's chaos outside. Scarlet began the song, her voice rising pure and resonant, a Veil Walker's melody forged in Yoruba roots and spirit calls. It started low, a hum vibrating through the ground, then built in layers, fracturing the air itself. Reality wavered at the edges. The rain slowed mid-fall, droplets hanging like crystals. Shadows peeled from the ocean depths, tendrils of darkness rising like smoke reversed, coiling toward the circle. They were not threats but allies, ancestral guardians summoned by the tune. Richard's ear throbbed suddenly, the remnant umbra seed stirring within, a faint writhing sensation as if sensing its end. He clutched the side of his head, whimpering. "It moves." Scarlet sang louder, words in ancient tongue weaving protection. The seed pushed, trying to reattach, a black filament emerging slightly from his ear, pulsing with malevolent life. From the cliffs above, a holographic projector activated amid the mercenaries' gear, despite Eugene's earlier disruptions. Victor Kane materialized, life-sized and smirking, his scarred face illuminated by the storm's lightning. "Fools!" His voice boomed through speakers, amplified over the wind. "You think a song undoes my work?" He gestured grandly, rain passing through the projection. "Your father bankrupted mine, Eugene. Stole patents, drove us to ruin. The Leon line ends in silence, oath-bound." Eugene glared up, palm bleeding freely now. "Your vengeance on a child. Coward." Victor laughed. "The seed is eternal. First lock in a greater chain." Mercenaries surged then, renewed by Victor's signal, rappelling faster despite the gale. Gunfire rattled, bullets sparking off the circle's barrier, the salt algae ward flaring blue with each impact. Eugene grabbed his sonic disruptor, biotech knowledge igniting. He adjusted frequencies on the device, targeting the mercenaries' comms and weapons. Pulses emitted, invisible waves overloading earpieces. Men clutched heads as feedback screamed, rifles jamming with electronic failures. "Keep singing," he shouted to Scarlet, shielding Richard with his body. A mercenary breached close, knife drawn, but Eugene tackled him, using the disruptor point-blank to stun, then hurling him into the waves. Scarlet's voice ascended to crescendo, the song fracturing reality further. Shadows from the ocean solidified into spectral forms, Veil Walker ancestors manifesting as translucent warriors, clashing with mercenaries in ethereal bursts. The umbra seed fully emerged from Richard's ear, a writhing obsidian mass hovering, tendrils lashing to re-enter. Scarlet directed the melody at it, notes piercing like arrows. The seed convulsed, shadows wrapping it, pulling. Eugene overloaded another wave of comms, mercenaries collapsing in disarray, sonic pulses disrupting balance. One fired wildly, bullet grazing the circle's edge, ward cracking slightly. Richard joined the song, his young voice piping in harmony, the first full sentence forming instinctively. "I hear the ocean singing back." The words empowered, tide responding with a massive surge, water flooding the cove up to the circle. The mixture in the bowl boiled, blood elements fusing. Scarlet thrust her hands forward, song peaking in a shattering note. The seed exploded into ash, particles scattering on the wind, dissolving into the shadows that retreated satisfied into the sea. Victor's hologram flickered, face contorting in rage. Impossible! The ancestors faded, ward holding. Mercenaries retreated, comms fried, some swept by waves. Eugene panted, knuckles raw but victorious. Richard beamed, ear clear, sounds pure now. Ocean song a lullaby. Scarlet slumped slightly, arm wound aching but smiled. Victor's final words crackled through failing projection. The seed was only the first lock. The hologram vanished, leaving thunder. The storm eased, tide receding, circle intact. Ritual complete, warfare won. But the cliffhanger lingered, greater chains unseen. Eugene helped Scarlet stand, Richard between them. The cove remembered, tide carrying ash away. Ancestors whispered approval in the wind. But Victor's warning echoed, the line not fully freed. Mercenaries fled up cliffs, defeated. Eugene scanned horizons, disruptor ready. Scarlet bound her arm tighter, songs echo in her throat. Richard listened to the ocean, sentence repeating softly. The midnight climax passed, but locks remained. The hologram dissolved into static, leaving only the fading echo of Victor's threat amid the subsiding storm. Rain softened to a drizzle, the tide pulling back from the cove with a satisfied sigh, carrying the seed's ashes into the depths. Scarlet leaned on Eugene for support, her grazed arm throbbing with a deeper burn now, the wound's edges darkening unnaturally. Richard stood between them, his small hand in hers, gray eyes scanning the cliffs where mercenaries had vanished into the night. "Gone," he said clearly, his voice gaining strength with each word. Eugene scanned the horizon one last time, sonic disruptor still warm in his grip, before guiding them up the hidden path. The estate loomed above, lights flickering as generators adjusted to the storm's aftermath. Dawn approached, but the price of silence had only begun to reveal itself. By the time they reached the side entrance, chaos had erupted. Media drones buzzed overhead like insistent insects, their cameras piercing the estate's perimeter despite security protocols. Reporters shouted from beyond the gates, questions flying about the hazmat team's expulsion, leaked files on medical fraud, and rumors of a miracle cure for the Leon heir. "Mr. Leon, is it true your son speaks?" one yelled. Eugene shielded Richard, ushering them inside through a service door. Staff milled in hallways, faces pale with shock, whispers spreading about the grotto confrontation, the cove battle. Harlan, the estate manager, approached hesitantly. "My lord, the board demands an emergency meeting. Stocks are volatile." Eugene nodded curtly. "Convene them in the main hall. Now." Scarlet's steps faltered in the corridor, her lithe form swaying. The wound on her arm pulsed with shadow energy, residual tendrils from the seed latching during the ritual's climax. Black veins spidered from the graze, sapping her strength. "It clings," she murmured, hazel-green eyes dimming. Richard noticed first, clinging tighter. Scarlet hurt. Eugene caught her as she weakened, scooping her up despite her protests. "Medical wing." Immediately. Nurses rushed them in, the same room where Richard had been scanned hours before. Scarlet lay on the bed, deep caramel skin ashen, braids spilling like dark rivers. Richard refused to leave, perching on the edge, holding her hand. "Stay," he insisted, voice firm. Eugene stepped out briefly for the board meeting. The main hall transformed into a war room. Holographic screens displayed plummeting stock charts, headlines screaming corruption. Board members appeared via secure links, faces grim. "The doctors we funded," one demanded. "Explain the protocol files." Eugene stood at the head, bloodied palm bandaged, suit torn. Complicit in fraud. All ties to Kane severed. He fired them en masse, revoking accesses, initiating lawsuits. Purge the network. Ethical audits across all medical partnerships. The board acquiesced, sensing his resolve. Media swarmed thicker outside, drones evading countermeasures. Eugene authorized a brief statement. Family matter resolved. Details forthcoming. But fallout rippled, rivals probing weaknesses. Back in the wing, Scarlet weakened further, fever rising as shadow energy infected. Antibiotics failed. The darkness resisted tech. Richard sat vigil, refusing food or rest. "You saved me. I save you." He spoke in growing paragraphs, practicing under nurse's guidance. The ocean sang loud, shadows danced, but you strong. His nightmares began then, jolting him awake with cries of writhing blackness in his ear. Eugene soothed him, but Richard returned to Scarlet's side. Nightmare seed comes back. Eugene's plan formed amid the chaos. He converted the East Wing into a healing sanctuary, blending his biotech with Scarlet's rituals. Labs retrofitted with rune-etched chambers, sonic devices tuned to spirit frequencies, herbal gardens under grow lights. "No more separation," he declared to staff. Tech and lore united. Construction started immediately, workers blending glass steel with sacred woods. Scarlet, drifting in delirium, murmured approvals. Balance. Richard's growth accelerated. Speech therapy integrated with Veil Walker chants, full paragraphs flowing. "Father, the waves tell stories now." Scarlet taught listen. But nightmares persisted, seeds echo haunting dreams. He described them vividly. Black coil whispers silence again. Eugene held him through tremors, guilt renewed. As evening fell, Scarlet stirred, shadow veins receding slightly from a poultice Richard applied under guidance. She examined Eugene closely, hazel-green eyes sharpening. In the quiet, she tilted his head, peering into his ear. A faint shimmer, dormant but present. "Second seed," she whispered. "Planted when you child." The lines curse deeper. Eugene froze, memories surfacing. Childhood illness, Kane's family doctor. The estate chaos outside paled. Media swarmed, board restructured, sanctuary rising. Scarlet weakened but alert, Richard speaking fluently yet nightmared. The dormant seed in Eugene's ear pulsed faintly, the price of silence echoing generations. Richard refused separation, paragraphs pleading. Family now. Eugene planned deeper, sanctuary expanding. Fallout corporate but personal curse awakened. Scarlet discovered the second seed, cliffhanger in revelation. The wing buzzed with activity, tech-spirit fusion. Scarlet's infection lingered, Richard's nightmares intensified. Eugene confronted his past, the childhood implant dormant no more. Eugene's hand flew to his ear, fingers probing the faint shimmer Scarlet had revealed under the medical light. The dormant seed pulsed once, a subtle throb like a forgotten heartbeat, confirming her words. The East Wing's conversion hummed in the background, workers installing rune-etched panels alongside sonic calibrators. But here in the quiet corner of the healing sanctuary's prototype room, the revelation hung heavier than any corporate fallout. Media drones still circled outside. Board members scrambled with damage control, yet this personal curse eclipsed it all. "When I was a child," Eugene murmured, voice rough, storm-gray eyes distant. Richard sat nearby, his slender frame tense in the cashmere sweater, gray gaze fixed on his father. Scarlet, propped against pillows despite her weakening state, nodded faintly, shadow veins receding but fever lingering. "The line's debt runs deeper. Your father's pact," she explained through labored breaths, the lore unfolding like threads from her grandmother's teachings. Eugene's father, desperate to rise from engineering obscurity, had struck a deal with Victor's family decades ago. A pact sealed in blood during a midnight meeting in an old warehouse, trading ethical patents for occult enhancements that accelerated wealth. "Prosperity for silence," Scarlet said. "The curse skips generations, planting seeds in heirs to ensure payment. Yours dormant until activated by Richard's." Eugene paced, salt and pepper hair disheveled, the midnight blue suit jacket discarded. Memories surfaced. Childhood fevers, a doctor with Victor's early scar, whispers of family insurance. He had dismissed them as illness delusions. Now truth stared back. Richard reached for his hand. Father cursed too. His paragraphs grew confident, voice clear despite nightmare echoes. We fix like mine. Eugene knelt, pulling him close. We will. But Scarlet's sacrifice loomed. To extract a seed this entrenched, tied to generational oath, required entering the spirit realm fully. I cross the veil, she whispered, hazel green eyes steady. Risk permanent exile. Body here, soul there. No return without anchor. Richard's role crystallized. His new voice, pure from the ritual's cleansing, would sing the tether song to pull her back. Eugene's confession fueled the break, but Scarlet bore the peril. They prepared in the grotto that night, the underground chamber now integrated into the sanctuary's core. Runes glowed brighter, responding to the family's united presence. Scarlet lay on a stone altar retrofitted with soft linens, her lithe form clad in ritual whites, braids fanned out, cowrie shells removed for the crossing. Her pouches crystals encircled her, herbs burning in braziers filling the air with earthy smoke. The infection's shadow energy had stabilized, but exile's risk paled her deep caramel skin further. Eugene sat at her head, palm freshly cut again, blood tracing runes on her forehead. For the pact my father made. He confessed louder, voice echoing. Greed over honor. I inherit and end it. Richard stood at her side, small hand on hers, practicing the anchor melody Scarlet taught, a simple Yoruba refrain amplified by his healed throat. The ritual began as moonlight filtered through vents, tidal echoes from the cove sinking below. Scarlet chanted entry words, body relaxing into trance. Her breathing slowed, then stopped visibly, soul departing. The runes flared white, grotto walls shifting to translucent veil. Eugene confronted visions immediately. His father, younger and ambitious, shaking hands with Victor's patriarch over a bloodied contract. Wealth eternal, the elder Leon vowed. Shadows coiled, seeds forming in infant Eugene's cradle unseen. Greed's face twisted in the vision, accusing. You continued it. Eugene roared back. I end it. Blood from his palm dripped onto the altar, visions fracturing. Richard sang the anchor, voice pure and steady. Come back, Scarlet. Home waits. The melody wove through the veil, a golden thread visible in the ethereal. Scarlet's soul navigated the spirit realm, a vast ocean of shadows and light. Ancestors guided, Mama Yemisi's form prominent, leading to Eugene's seed, a massive rooted blackness in a spectral ear. She hooked it with obsidian tool manifested, pulling against oath's resistance. Visions assaulted Eugene harder, boardrooms where he ignored ethics for mergers, echoing his father's path. Confess all, Scarlet's distant voice urged. I chose power over family, he admitted, tears mixing with blood. The seed loosened. Richard's song intensified, paragraphs now in melody. I hear you, Scarlet. Ocean sings your name. Pull back. His nightmares fueled empathy, voice anchoring stronger. Scarlet yanked the seed free in the realm, it dissolving into light particles. But backlash hit, exile's pull strengthening, shadows tugging her deeper. Anchor holds, she fought, following the golden thread. The seed in Eugene's physical ear writhed, emerging as black ash. It dissolved on the altar, curse breaking. But Scarlet's body convulsed, eyes snapping open milky white, soul not fully returned. She collapsed limp, breath ragged. Richard ceased singing, panic rising. Scarlet! Eugene checked pulse, faint. She crossed too far. The grotto runes dimmed, veil thinning from the ritual's force. Scarlet whispered hoarsely, eyes unseeing. The veil is thinning. They're coming through. Shadows lingered at edges, not fully banished. Eugene's debt paid, but greater threats stirred. Richard clung, voice pleading. Come back fully. The cliffhanger whispered of invasions beyond one family. Eugene lifted her, carrying to the sanctuary proper. Richard followed, singing softly to maintain tether. Visions faded, but the thinning veil portended. Scarlett's milky eyes stared blank, soul half-anchored. The father's debt settled, yet the price escalated. Media chaos outside forgotten, corporate fires banked. The grotto sealed, runes warning. Scarlett sacrificed, Richard anchored, Eugene confronted. But they approached through the tear. Richard's paragraphs turned to lullabies, pulling. Eugene planned reinforcements, tech spirit wards. The revelation complete, curse skipped no more, but veil's breach loomed. Scarlett's whisper repeated faintly. Coming through. The family huddled, ritual's success bittersweet. Exile risked, anchor strained. The chapter closed on the thinning, spirits stirring. Scarlett's whisper faded into a rasp as Eugene carried her from the grotto. Her body limp in his arms, milky eyes staring at nothing. Richard trailed close, his small hand gripping her ritual whites, voice weaving the anchor song in desperate loops. Stay with us, Scarlett. The ocean needs your light. The sanctuary wing enveloped them, tech spirit fusion alive with humming calibrators and incense braziers. Nurses guided Eugene to a central chamber, the altar bed surrounded by crystal amplifiers tuned to veil frequencies. He laid her down gently, storm-gray eyes fierce with determination. The thinning veil's shadows lingered at the room's edges, faint wisps testing the wards. Scarlett's soul hung tethered by Richard's melody, exile's pull warring with a golden thread. Hours blurred into a vigil. Richard refused sleep, paragraphs of song evolving into stories. Remember the cove, shadows dancing good. You strong. Eugene coordinated reinforcements, sonic barriers reinforcing rune walls. Media frenzy outside intensified, but he muted it, focus inward. Scarlett's chest rose shallowly, hazel green glow absent from her eyes. Then, as dawn's second light pierced vents, the anchor strengthened. Richard's voice peaked in a clear refrain, pulling. Scarlett gasped, body arching. Milky film cleared slowly, vision restoring in bursts. Spirits flooded her sight constantly now, translucent forms hovering, ancestors, lost souls, veil echoes. Mama Yemisi's silhouette smiled approval. She sat up weakly, lithe form trembling, braids disheveled. I see them all, she breathed, gazing at ethereal figures only she perceived. The crossing gifted sight, but no filter. Richard hugged her. Back. Eugene knelt. The thinning. Scarlett nodded, spirits whispering around her. Victor heads a cabal. Implants seeds in heirs of rival empires. Global control through silenced lineages. Visions from the realm clarified. Boardrooms shadowed by occult bindings. Children cursed worldwide. Wealthy dynasties weakened. Cabals rising. Eugene's counterstrike ignited. He mobilized his media empire, leaking cabal documents from hacked Kane servers. Broadcasts interrupted global feeds. Corporate curses exposed. Heirs silenced for power. Headlines exploded, empires trembling. He launched the Veilwalker Network publicly. Free clinics blending ancient healing and ethical tech. First sites in the estate's expanded sanctuary, then worldwide rollout. No child pays for adult greed, his statement declared. Donations poured, ethical partners aligning. Richard's mission began under Scarlett's guidance. His healed ears detected seed frequencies, subtle hums inaudible to others. Training in sound labs, he isolated signatures with sonic scanners. Like ocean whispers but wrong, he described in fluent paragraphs. I find them. Nightmares lessened, purpose channeling fear. Scarlet, spirit's constant companions, taught discernment. Hear the veil's truth. Action culminated in the raid on Victor's Island lab, a fortified atoll in international waters. Eugene orchestrated diversion, media satellites broadcasting live exposés, drawing cabal forces. Fake leaks pinned locations elsewhere. Scarlett and Richard infiltrated via submersible, her spirit sight guiding through wards, his frequency detection bypassing alarms. Eugene monitored from the estate, sonic diversions jamming defenses remotely. The lab loomed underwater lit, seed nurseries in vats pulsing. Scarlet navigated ethereal guardians, ancestors shielding. Richard pinpointed core's engine. Here. Many seeds. They sabotaged, crystals disrupting bindings. Victor confronted in the core chamber, scarred face snarling. You meddle in Eternals. Richard recorded covertly, device capturing confession. Cabal's seed silence. Empires fall to us. Scarlet shattered vats, seeds dissolving. Victor fled through escape pod, but nursery destroyed, confession secured. Scarlet recovered fully in the sanctuary, vision burdened but empowered. Spirits advised constantly. Eugene's network expanded, clinics opening. Richard trained detectors globally. The raid's success broadcast Victor's words, Cabal fracturing. But Victor escaped, shadows stirring. Richard's recording played worldwide, stakes global. The Veil Walkers rose, but the war continued. Spirits whispered warnings to Scarlet. Eugene planned next strikes. Richard detected distant seeds. The chapter built conspiracies scale, actions thrill. Victor's pod vanished into depths, confession echoing. Nursery ash but Cabal intact. Global stakes set, Veil Walkers mobilized. Victor's escape pod vanished into the black depths, but the confession he left behind detonated across every screen on the planet. Within weeks the Cabal splintered. Heirs stepped forward, seeds were extracted in Veil Walker clinics, and the name Cain became synonymous with ruin. Yet the family knew the war was not over. Only the battlefield had widened. They returned to the cliffside estate at dawn, Scarlet spirit sight still crowded with translucent guides, Richard's ears ringing with the after-harmony of destroyed nurseries, Eugene's knuckles scabbed from the raid's final grapple. The ocean below rolled in slow, deliberate breaths, as though the tide itself had decided to wait. 1 year later the estate no longer echoed with silence. Laughter spilled from every corridor. Children from the network practicing sign-song duets, technicians tuning sonic healers to ancestral rhythms, cooks arguing over recipes that blended Niger Delta spices with Pacific kelp. The East Wing had become a living campus. Glass walls etched with runes, floors warmed by geothermal veins, gardens where bioluminescent algae bloomed in spirals. Richard, now 13, moved through it all with the easy grace of a boy who had never known sound and now composed it. His jet-black hair had grown to brush his collar. The sharp cheekbones had softened into adolescence. In the music studio overlooking the cove he sat at a holographic keyboard, fingers dancing across light keys that produced chords no human ear had heard before, frequencies that soothed residual seed scars in distant patients. "The ocean gave me scales," he told visitors, "so I give them back." Scarlet led the Veil Walker network from a circular council room open to the sky. Her braids were longer, cowrie shells replaced by tiny crystal amplifiers that translated spirit whispers into data streams for clinics worldwide. She trained apprentices from every continent. A deaf coder from Seoul who heard code in colors, a Maasai healer who sang wind patterns into medicine, an Inuit girl whose drumbeats mapped ice frequencies. Spirits hovered constantly at her shoulder, Mama Yemisi proudest among them, but Scarlet had learned to filter, to invite counsel without drowning. Her hazel-green eyes still glowed, yet the glow was steady now, a lantern rather than a flare. Eugene had stepped down as CEO the day the first clinic opened in Lagos. He signed the papers in the sanctuary garden, salt wind tugging his salt and pepper hair, then handed the pen to a 12-year-old patient who had just spoken her mother's name for the first time. Philanthropy became his new empire, funding mobile Veil Walker units, satellite arrays that beamed Richard's therapeutic compositions to remote villages, scholarships for spirit-sensitive youth. Boardrooms felt like tombs after the cove. He preferred the open-air council where decisions were made by consensus and tide charts. The wedding took place at dusk on the exact terrace where Richard had first collapsed. No guests beyond the household and network apprentices. Richard officiated, standing tall in a linen tunic dyed indigo with ocean pigments. He spoke fluently, signing simultaneously so the deaf children in the front row could follow. By the salt that bound us, by the song that freed us, by the blood we mingled in the circle, I declare you bound. Eugene, in simple white, placed a ring of braided silver and cowrie on Scarlett's finger. She wore a dress woven from healing fibers, deep caramel skin luminous against the sunset. When they kissed, the ocean itself seemed to applaud, waves crashing in perfect cadence. Richard grinned, voice ringing clear. Family finally official. Peace settled like mist, but the veil never truly closed. Scarlett saw it in the spirit's restless clustering. Richard felt it in discordant frequencies that crept into his compositions. Then, 3 nights before the anniversary of the raid, Richard woke gasping. In the dream, a single seed pulsed in a child's ear. Somewhere east, a city of stone and smog. He heard the frequency as clearly as his own heartbeat, a low, hungry hum threaded with Victor's signature. He ran barefoot to the council room where Scarlett meditated under starlight. "It's alive," he panted. "One left. Calling." Eugene was already pulling up satellite maps when they burst in. Coordinates resolved. An orphanage in Old Delhi, a girl scheduled for routine neural therapy, funded by a shell company still linked to Kane. The family exchanged no words, only nods. The jet waited on the private pad, engines warming. Scarlett packed her pouch with fresh crystals. Richard loaded a portable composer that could broadcast counter-frequencies mid-flight. Eugene carried the original sonic disruptor, now upgraded with Veilwalker runes. They boarded at twilight, the estate lights winking farewell. Richard stood between his parents, one hand on each. The engines roared, lifting them above the cliffs. He looked down at the cove where everything had begun, waves glinting like scattered notes. "The ocean taught me to listen," he said, voice steady and musical. "Now we teach the world." The jet banked east, cutting across the night toward the final hum. Scarlett's spirits rode the cabin's edges, eager. Eugene squeezed her hand, redemption complete in purpose. Richard closed his eyes, already composing the song that would silence the last seed. Some silences are curses, others are invitations. This is the story of the ones who answered.